Hello and welcome to Buildings of Tomorrow. My name is John Lester, and in today's episode we are talking about gaining operational efficiencies for buildings leveraging BIM and Digital Twin technology. I'm joined today by Kevin Bauer, who is the lead for BIM and Digital Twin at Siemens Smart Infrastructure in Europe. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome, John.
Let's start at the start. BIM and Digital Twin are both topics we hear a lot about in our industry. For the sake of this discussion, and it is the first discussion we're going to have, I think there's a lot of things to cover, so we'll do a couple of different episodes along the way. But what do we mean when we say Digital Twin from your perspective?
Yeah, Digital Twin is really the combination of BIM, static data, and also sensor technology, so data from the IoT, from the building management systems like fire safety, security, building automation. It's really the combination of these two technologies.
Mm-hmm. And because it's a combination, is that what brings these efficiencies? Because in today's discussion, we're going to talk a little bit about why and why is it important. And maybe you could give us a bit of a hint. Why is it important that BIM and Digital Twin is there to help us gain those efficiencies?
Yeah, the big efficiencies you gain in the operation phase. Yeah, if you really combine the BIM data, which you get from the planning phase or the construction phase until the operation phase, and then you combine it with the operational data from the room automation, from the primary energy systems like presence detection, humidity, CO2 level. And if you combine this data, you can enable new use cases like space analytics, 3D-based incident management, better energy efficiency. So it's really all about increasing the operational efficiency for building from an energetical perspective, from a facility management perspective, and from better space usage.
Yeah, I understand. And for me, that's a really important aspect because too often we talk just about BIM in the construction or the planning phase. We talk too much about how the digital twin is useful, but we have to be able to get there. And if you had one hint, because in our following discussions, we're going to talk a few different things. We're going to use some real world examples that you've gone through yourself and your team. What's really the important step to bring these two different technologies, let's call it, together? How do we get BIM and combine it with this stuff to create that digital twin in the future?
Yeah, I think it's really important if you design and build a building. Yeah, also really think about in the early phase of how you want to operate the building. Yeah, and there in the operation phase, all the sensor technology is really important because you have a lot of maintenance. It's responsible for the energy efficiency, and therefore it's also really important if you want to come to a digital twin to also do a BIM-based design of the building automation system, fire safety system, security system.
We're certainly going to talk through them. It's the digital twin is really this combination of the information collected during the BIM phase with the information and the live data that's then collected during the operation phase. It's important for us because this insight really can deliver some of those new benefits that deliver efficiency, like you discussed really quickly. And at the last phase, of course, you need to know where you're trying to get to, because if you don't think about how you want to operate a building while you're going through the planning process, it makes everything much more difficult in the next phase and the next phase. Let's jump quickly into the why. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of buildings around the globe. We know we need to operate them better. How can BIM and Digital Twin help us achieve that?
I think, a really important thing is, we're in the construction business, and, construction business is one name you can say to the construction business is like chaotic. And therefore, we still have the same productivity like 20 years ago. At the same time, the automotive industry increased its productivity dramatically, but we're at the same level. Yeah? And BIM on the one hand is really one thing to help us getting the efficiency in general, like the automotive industry. But next to this, it's also really important to not just think about how to construct a building. It's also about thinking why we should operate buildings really much more efficient. Yeah, thinking about the Green Deal in the year of 2050. Yeah, buildings play a crucial role. Like, for example, 38% of all the CO2 emissions are generated by buildings. 37% of the waste of buildings, so 37% of the material becomes waste, and 55% of the facility maintenance programs are fix it when it breaks. And, if you want to reach a Green Deal, we really have to work on this.
Yeah, and just for those listening, the Green Deal is a EU-based energy efficiency and sustainability, almost, let's call it a regulation, a goal for the EU to really reach some quite significant savings across many different parts of the company, but across the organisation. But this building operation is a really key part of that. Correct?
Yeah, it's really crucial. If we don't correctly operate our buildings, they need much more CO2. And on the other hand, we don't use our resources efficiently. And I think when you go through the news now, all the everything gets more expensive because the resources on our planet are fixed. We can't make more of them. Yeah? And now we are really at the phase where we should reduce the temperature, the increasing of the temperature, and also think about how we use the material what we need in buildings. Yeah?
Understand. And it's a discussion which is a good one, and it's not the first time we've talked about sustainability in this podcast and this show. But what's interesting for us is in this particular discussion, how do we get BIM and Digital Twin perspective? Because that really does offer capabilities and some of the values that you discussed before, which we're not able to do today with a more traditional approach. But let's talk a little bit about how. There's a process that we have to go through. There have to be some changes to what we do. Do you have an example, or can you talk us through a little bit? We know we want to do it. We want to achieve it. How do we go about it? What are some of the steps that we need to undertake?
Yeah, man, I can guide you through a real project where we did this. It was a R&D project of the Vienna Business Agency together with Siemens and the Vienna Distributed Systems. It's the technology where I was BIM manager and project leader, where we, really analyzed how to design, build, and operate buildings differently, because today we have these big problems. Yeah? And the first thing which is really important is that before we start to design and build a building, we really have to think about on how we want to operate the building. And what is for this kind of building? Is it a hospital, or is it an industry building, or is it an office building? What kind of use cases or targets you have in the operation of the building? And then if you have these targets, then you drill down how you design it, how you build it, what kind of technology you need to have there. Yeah? So it's really about, at the beginning, first step is thinking differently about how we're thinking about the building as a product, be really customer centric, or not just design and build, and then the operation will come afterwards. Yeah?
And that's a big shift, isn't it? Because even if we're building a building and we know that it's going to be a hospital, or we know it's going to be an office building, it's not very often the conversation happens with the people operating it, and you're setting things like you're discussing, KPIs, expectations on how it should operate, down to the level of workflows and what other things that need to be achieved on a daily basis. How was that conversation? How did you get that information and that insight from all the different stakeholders across this example?
Yeah, it's really about, in early phase, sitting together with the head, the ones who are operating the building. So, for example, in a hospital, really talking to the COO or the head of facility management and asking them, hey, what are your problems today? What kind of inefficiencies do you have? Yeah? And then, for example, we identified in a hospital, it's really a lot about how to increase the operational facility management. Because imagine a hospital is opened 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and for the next 50 years. Yeah. And, if we can reduce for them the alarm management, so for example, if there is an alarm and we can help them identifying this alarm quickly and resolving it, this is a business outcome which is really quantifiable. And then let's say they can use the staff much better. Or a second use case topic in hospitals is, they have a lot of staff, medical staff and nurses. And they also often said that they don't really know where is the next medical equipment, or they don't know where the next doctor is. Yeah, and for them, asset tracking is really important. And if you then have these use cases based on real problems, then you need to define them and then think about how we have to build and design the building, or design and build the building, and which kind of data do we need to come to these use cases. So, for example, when you think about this operational FM use case, we need to have a BIM-based management station. And for asset tracking, we need to have IoT sensors in there which enable this asset tracking. So in this early phase, really think about these use cases, and then if you have these use cases, really define them in asset information requirements concerning ISO 9650, and then you can start the designing of the building. Yeah, but this is the first step.
You just mentioned a couple of pieces of information that I remember from my BIM training, and I forgot to mention at the start that you're a certified building smart trainer, and I can see it working already. I like it. No, that's really important, because I think it's not unusual for us to think today about how is a building going to be used, but maybe some of the problems, or one of the things that you demonstrate and discuss here, is that you take something really functional and operational, and you don't lose the connection when you bring it back to the design. You don't just say, okay, to do this, we need this technology, and then you lose that connection. It's part of that design process, also connected to the actual operational technologies behind it. So we go through this process where we talked about planning. What happens when we get to then construction? So we have a BIM model. We have a detailed BIM model that really gives us all the information, not just about the concrete, not just about the glass, but also about the operational technologies down to the sensors in some cases. What happens next? When we go on site, we break ground and we start to dig a hole.
Yeah, just some words again on the design process. I forgot to say this. It's really important to also design the building automation system, so all the fire detectors, security cameras, sensors, actuators are in there, because we can then do already earlier compliance checking. For example, is this BIM model compliant to fire safety regulations? And do we have what's with the sensors? We can already do in advance configuration of the data points, and the building automation control network we can figure in advance, because then in the construction phase it becomes crucial, because we need to design our digital twin in advance. That we then, when we get on the real side and we construct it, then we want to construct a real digital twin based on the data from the digital twin. And therefore, we need to really integrate also the commissioning process, so that at the end, somebody really checks up, are all the data points what we configure also in the BIM model. And let's say, is everything there from an operational data perspective, but also from a geometrical perspective? And there, what we did in this project in Vienna and Aspern, we integrated 3D scanning into the complete construction process as its own process or its own discipline. Just to give you an example, how do we do this? We did 18 3D scans in 3 phases, so structural work, equipment phase, as build phase. And for example, when the people were finished they worked already the second floor and did there the concrete work, we scanned the first floor. And if they have finished the mechanical systems, then we scanned the mechanical systems. At the end, we had a 3D scan, a 3D as-built scan of the building, which we then used to, again, adapt the BIM models to get really full-fledged as-built BIM models. Check them then also against the data points that, each data point, each sensor, humidity sensor, whatever is in the BIM model has the right addresses, because, this is crucial, because if you then come to the operation phase, imagine again, you're a big hospital, you're really big, you have a lot of sensors distributed over the complete building. This has to match. Otherwise, you will have a hard time, because, if somebody closes the suspended ceiling, nobody will do it again afterwards, because opening this will be really costly. Yeah? So you need to do your homework in the creation of the digital twin.
No, what I really like about that is, you just discussed really quickly quite a lot of different benefits. Not only is it verifying the actual delivery compared to the plan, and verifying the placement of different equipment compared to the plan, but then also using that to update. So when you really walk out on handover day, you have a BIM model that is so accurate to what is reality, and has all of the different equipments in it for that use case that you just described. If I have a failure in a sensor, I know exactly where it is, I know exactly what it is, and if it's in an operation room, if it's in a storeroom, or if it's in a corridor. And this helps me in that next phase, in this operational phase. Is that one of those core use cases where we see when the preparation is done correctly and when that planning is done down to that level of detail, you really start to cash in the benefits in that operation phase?
Exactly. Yeah. If you have created this digital twin in this detail, then you have a really good building documentation. And, if you really know exactly how you documented everything, then, it's also much easier for you to do a better operation, because if something breaks, you have an alarm somewhere, then you can map the alarm to the real object. And, then you really quickly can identify there's an alarm. Where is it? And then from this where, from the BIM model, I can derive what's the priority. Imagine again, you're a hospital. An alarm in an office room is not a big problem, but an alarm, temper is broken in the surgery room, it's really important. You have to solve it really quickly, because there could be a loss of pressure, and you could have a viral infection through a surgery, and exactly this priority. And next to this, you also exactly know where, as facility manager, where do I need to go, and how do I get there, and which kind of product I need to fix. And in today's world, it's a little bit of walking around, and it's unfortunately really inefficient. We identified that with this spatial intelligence, we can decrease the time needed to resolve an alarm up to 50%.
Which is huge, especially when you talk about critical infrastructure like a hospital. That is also a huge site, a very complex site with many different systems. This is exponential as far as cost and consistency of operation if you can achieve 50% saving every time you have an error. Kevin, thank you so much. We're going to have a lot more discussions into detail into some of these topics around every phase of this building, and then also listening to some of the experiences you had when you really got down into the mud and did this. So I look forward to those. At the very start, we talked about three things. We talked about what a digital twin is, why it's important for operations, and some of the steps we have to consider to get there. The first one was, what's a digital twin? Can you cover that quickly for us again? And then we'll skip through those points quickly, because I think they're important for us for the next discussions as well.
Yeah, a digital twin is really the combination of BIM and sensor technology to really enable then really efficient building operations from an energetical and technical operations perspective, so to have really smooth building operations. And the last important thing is, how do we get there? It's really about also having a BIM-based design for building automation systems, so fire safety, security, building automation, to come to the digital twin. Yeah. So this is really quickly said, this is what about. Yeah.
I like it a lot. Kevin, thank you so much for your time and for your expertise. I look forward to the next conversations, but thank you for the time today.
Thank you, Jan. It was really a pleasure.
It's always good.
Looking forward for the next meeting.
Yeah, me as well. I can't wait for that. But thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who's listening. Please remember to comment, share, like this episode, subscribe to us whether you're watching on YouTube or any of the other podcast platforms, and look out for the new episodes and more episodes to come with Kevin, where we're going to talk in real detail about creating this digital twin, this operational twin for a building, and some of the considerations and learnings that he had throughout the process. So thank you again, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.